Hi everyone, if Rammstein can release summer music video in middle of the winter, then I might as well release winter video while it's still summer-ish. In this video I'm replacing seals to my pressure regulator. The job itself is really straightforward and can be done with basic tools. Usually the pressure regulator starts to leak either from the bottom of the pressure regulator leg or from the return cap seal, and both of those seals are just a regular O-rings. The pressure regulator is always located somewhere at the engine bay. I did this job to this car a few years ago in not much better weather conditions, so I must have messed up the seal during the reassembly because it started to weep LHM not long after. To make my life easier, I drive my car to the ramps to have a good access. And if anyone's interested, the temperature was only minus 19 degrees Celsius. I start by removing one of the hydraulic line support brackets, and shortly after I release the hydraulic pressure before I'm going to forget it. Depressurizing goes as usual. Open 12mm bleed screw for 1 to 1.5 turns. Now it's time to remove the upper hydraulic bracket, and then we can remove the hydraulic lines. Mine has 2 hydraulic lines, but the cars with the FDV valve have a 3rd hydraulic line. Like always, I try to get the hydraulic lines off by wiggling and pulling. But if that doesn't work, I use a long-nosed pliers to get them off. Once the hydraulic lines are disconnected, it's time to remove the pressure regulator itself. The regulator is held in place by 3 11mm bolts. At this point my camera decided that it had enough of the cold and shut down. After you have removed this 11mm bolt, you can remove the pressure regulator return line. Remember to put a drip drain under because it will empty the return line. Now you can undo this lower 11mm bolt and you should be able to remove the pressure regulator. Before we start dismantling things, let's clean it quickly because we don't want any dirt in the hydraulic system. Let's start by removing the accumulator sphere. The first O-ring we'll be replacing is under this cutout spring cap. Press the cap with your hand while undoing the bolts because there's a spring under the cap. Some lead citrons have 2 springs under the cap. Here is the cup for the cutout spring. And here is the spring itself. There is a shim inside the cap to adjust the cutout pressure. Now let's replace the O-ring. In typical citron fashion, the O-ring is not standard size. However, that doesn't matter because we can use the closest standard size, such as a 33 by 37 mm O-ring. I like to lube the new seal with LHM and then we can reassemble the cutout side of the pressure regulator. Now I remove the O-ring for the sphere before I'm going to lose it. The last O-ring that I'm going to replace is located under this bracket in the cut-in spring cap. The cap is held in place by a circlip, so you need to drill a small hole on the side of the regulator. The drill bit should be 3 to 4 mm and remember not to drill into the circlip. The center of the hole should be about 6 mm from the end of the regulator. I'll give you a few tips for the drilling shortly. To be able to compress the cut-in spring, screw a M7 bolt to the spring cap. Compress the spring with vise. Now is the time for those tips that I mentioned. If you need to drill a hole to the side of the pressure regulator, it's a good idea to compress the spring so that you don't hit the spring cap with your drill bit. Also drill the hole close to the circlip and once you have finished, slide the circlip over the hole. And now, just send it. The cap should now come off easily by relieving the pressure from the spring. Don't be like me and drop the regulator. I was lucky at this time, and things didn't end up flying. For some reason, the cap just wouldn't come out. So I decided to do something that is not recommended. I took a good grip of the regulator and simply pulled it off. In the regulator you can see the cutting spring cup. And as with the cutout side, you may have two cutting springs. Here is a shim to adjust the cutting pressure. After a quick clean, you can clearly see the bite mark on the O-ring, which shows that I wasn't careful enough when I replaced it the first time. Here is the correct size for the O-ring, and of course it's not a conventional size, so choose the closest matching size. I think I used size 28 by 35 by 3.5 millimeters. This time I'm using a liberal amount of grease to protect the O-ring. Now everything can go back together. Press the cap as evenly as possible. You know, you don't want to damage the O-ring like someone did. There's nothing special about fitting the circlip back. Just watch out for your fingers and position the circlip so that it's easier to remove next time. And we're pretty much done. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to show you the famous ball that you can lose if you open the bleed screw too much. There is a O-ring on the bleed screw, and here's the size for that, but I'm not going to replace it this time. Here is the ball that everyone is always talking about. Now that everyone has seen it, let's quickly put it back before it escapes. The last thing to do is to fit the accumulator sphere and tighten it using the 5-finger technique. Fitting the regulator back goes as Haynes says, so you can end this video here. But if you want to see me suffer, by all means continue watching. I had to loosen the accumulator sphere because the return line was so frozen that it wouldn't bend. And to make things worse, I have replaced the original spring cap with an aluminium one from a DS, which makes the clearance even more tighter. This is a good example of the downsides when working in the cold. I have gloves, but they always seem to make things more difficult, so I tend not to use them for more precise things. I finally managed to get one of the bolts in, but now I can't feel my fingers, so it's time to take a break. What a good timing, my camera froze too. Now that me and my camera are warmed up, let's put everything back together, shall we? I always like to loosely fit every bolt before tightening anything, to allow the pressure regulator to find its place. This is why I wanted to show the refitting of the regulator. This 6.35mm hydraulic line is always a pain to get fitted, because it's an original steel line. As you can see, it tries to go in at an angle. Here's a picture to clarify the situation. A is the rubber seal, and the section B of the pipe fits tightly into hole C. And because the pipe is in an angle, it just refuses to go into that hole. I tried to bend it, but it just didn't want to play ball, and I didn't want to force it because that always ends up badly. tried and tried to get that thing in, but the pipe's with la resistance wasn't letting go. You know, in times like these, when you lie in the snow, it's almost -20 and your fingers are frozen, you just think, why didn't your parents force you to go in the ballet or something when you were a kid? Out of frustration, I took the seal out to see if the pipe was even going to fit. It turned out that it would fit, but only after a bit of fight. So, let's keep on trying. And would you believe it? It's in. Now is the time to fit the last hydraulic line, and this is how easily they should go in. After the hydraulic lines are in place, you can fit back the support brackets. Make sure that the bleed screw is open and then start the car. Let the car idle for a bit before tightening the bleed screw. The system usually pressurizes quickly, but if the car won't race, open the bleed screw and let it idle for longer and then tighten the bleed screw. Nothing seems to be leaking, so it's time to top up the LHM. That is how you can replace seals to your pressure regulator. Thanks for watching.